Welcome back to Warzone and welcome to my first tank review on a French tank, and it happens to be the Tech Tree 6.7 medium tank, the AMX-50 at rank 4, and it's a fantastic machine. I got a lot of good battles, and I think I really like how the French are implemented. You don't have a lot of armor, you have really good speed, your gun is a bit weird, you basically have a 7-shot autoloader, and your crew skills don't really matter when it comes to the gun in certain respects. You have a very good turret traverse speed. It's all about mobility, side shotting, ambushing, timing your gameplay around the, well, clip reload, so to speak, which is 38 seconds, and really I think it's a capable tank. However, compared to the Lorraine 40T, to which it is very similar, especially you know, how it plays and how the gun behaves, it's not as enjoyable for two reasons. It's slower, you gain a little bit of armor, which is mostly insignificant, and well, you are thrown into a completely different matchmaker. 6.3 for the Lorraine 40T, fantastic. 6.7 matchmaking, you see much more up tiers in comparison to the Lorraine 40T, which is very often top tier, and even if it gets up tiers, there are a lot of 6.3 tanks which it can deal with. So without further ado, let's see how fast we can make this tank review. Let's begin with the armor. We can see 80mm on the upper hull. That's a bit like a Panther, so you can bounce shots, but for all intents and purposes it's Panther armor. Lower plate, 61 degrees of sloping, 35mm thickness. A lot of stuff goes through, and you don't have a transmission behind it that holds up all the shrapnels and so forth. Those side cheeks are 60mm, but they are angled away, so effective thickness is 140mm, much like the upper plate, more or less. And yeah, the side of the hull is 30mm, and it's big, it's flat, it's a huge target. Some additional tracks here. The rear of the vehicle, 40mm or 30mm on the hatch. The top is just 20mm, just 5mm on the radiators and the exhaust pipes, and or no, it's not the exhaust, but you know, some vents and whatnot. The turret roof as well. And then we come to the turret. Now it's an oscillating turret. So it whips around those parts here, and it's not very thickly armored like the entirety of the tank. 30mm here for this what you can call throat cover, so to speak. Then here 45mm for the turret front. It's deeply angled, but you don't exceed 85mm of effective angling. Even the gun mantle is not convincing. I mean, there are parts where you can bounce stuff, so if you hit right here, but you have to be exceptionally unlucky. So that means SPA firing on the turret where there is no overlap under the gun, firing here or firing here has a decent chance of going through, especially German 37mm with APHE. They just will tear you apart. And there is also a cupola, just 43mm of effective thickness. I have died, not just once, to an SPA firing at the cupola with the APHE. So German SPA is really dangerous. So it's not really about the armor. If you compare it to the Lorraine 40T, it has even less armor, but you know, it's not really significant. It's more or less the same tank. So back to the AMX-50, let's have a look at the interior. We have indeed 5 crew members, and that gives you some survivability. So we have 2 crew members, the machine gunner and the driver in the hull, and 3 in the turret, which is relatively small, the gunner, the commander, and the loader. We have the engine with the fuel tanks and the transmission all in the back, where it belongs, and well, a lot of ammunition. So this ammo rack looked very German. We have a bit of ammunition here in the turret. The gun breech here with this drum, which is the actual autoloader, is relatively big. And yeah, we also have here some ammunition. 49 rounds with 7 rounds each. I would recommend that you take out 2 clips so you still have enough ammunition, but you can survive a few more shots maybe. And indeed, I have survived numerous turret hits and came out alive. And even if you're down to 2 crew members, it doesn't affect the reload between the rounds within the clip, and also the clip reload not. So it's good for you, I guess. And I think that's it with the tank. Let's move on to some other stats. So let's begin with the mobility, and we have a very strong engine, 1000 horsepower flat out. That's 10% more than the Panther II's very strong 900 horsepower engine. But you're also a relatively heavy tank with 54 tons for a medium. I have no idea where the weight is coming from, because it's certainly not the armor. So let me know in the comment section. That leads then to a 18.5 horsepower per ton ratio, which is really not bad. But you immediately can see that is more than the actual light tank at the same battle rating, the AMX-50 SS11, which is also not very slow. But you can't keep up with the Lorraine 40T and also with the top speed. I mean, you still have 51 kilometers an hour top speed. That is decent, and you face it on a regular basis. So you hit the top speed, that's what I try to say. But you know, if you compare yourself with the Panther II, you're just not good enough to really compete with it. In both top speed, it's a little bit better, and the horsepower to ton ratio. Also in the reverse speed. And this is where both the AMX-50 and the AMX-13 SS11 are very disappointing, because they are so good in getting into flanking positions, which is the actual playstyle, and they get the ambush shots, but then you just can't retreat in time to deny the enemy the return shot. So minus 5 kilometers an hour is not very good. And also you have no neutral steering, especially when you're stuck. It's a bit painful with the mobility. You have all this engine power, but you barely can use it. So this is something where you can compare yourself to the Panther II. So yeah, you can see the tank has fairly good mobility, but the armor, as we saw, was not very impressive. Let's talk about the firepower. And now it gets very interesting, because you have the joint biggest caliber of 100 millimeters with the T-34-100 and the Lorraine 40T. And this SA-47 L58 cannon is great. Even when it is stock, it's fairly accurate. You have 59 rounds, and you have reload in your autoloader between the rounds of 6.67 seconds. So you fire 9 rounds per minute, but this is not keeping up with the 12 rounds per minute or the 5-second reload of the AMX-13. And you have just 7 rounds in the clip, whereas the AMX-13 has 12 rounds in the clip. So this is something that you have to keep in mind. Furthermore, I have not talked about the reload of the entire clip. It's 38 seconds for the AMX-50 and the Lorraine 40T that shares the same weapon system with you, nearly in every respect. And the AMX-13 has a reload of 45 seconds. Both the reload between the shots in the magazine and also the magazine reload itself is independent from your crew skills, unlike all the other tanks. And this is now very interesting if we look, for example, at the reload of the Carnarvon. Because the Carnarvon with the 20-pounder fires every 6.3 seconds on an ace crew. However, it doesn't reload, it does not need to reload a magazine. So the kind of advantage from the autoloader is not that apparent. Also keep in mind, the AMX-50 doesn't have a stabilizer, whereas the Carnarvon and the Centurion Mark III and all or the majority of British tanks and upwards have a stabilizer. Same with the Object 906 that fires every 6.0 seconds, also for an ace crew. Not to forget this. But here comes the real cherry, and this is 30 degrees of turret rotation speed for the AMX-50, the AMX-13 and the Lorraine 40T. And this is significantly higher and even tanks such as the T-34-100 and M26, which have rather fast rotation speeds, can't keep up with that. So you are decent in brawling. If you can avoid getting hit for the first few seconds, you can surround your enemy and pump the shots into the side. You have the mobility for it, not the armor though, so it depends what you're facing. If you're taking on an SPA, good luck. And then we also have to talk about the gun depression. -8 degrees is better than the AMX-13, so you're a bit better in, you know, contesting those ridge lines, but you're far from capable of comparing yourself with the M26E1 and also the Carnarvon. You are so much better though than the T-34-100, and the Panther II is not so much about the ridge lines, although because of the better reverse gear, it can do it a bit better than you with the same gun depression. Gun elevation though is a different story, and this is a bit strange because you have 15 degrees of gun elevation, which is not the highest. It might be due to your oscillating turret design, but the Lorraine 40T shares with you so many similarities. I wonder why it just has 13 degrees of gun elevation. Same with the AMX-13, but that has a different turret. Your elevation speed though is very nice indeed, 5 degrees of gun depression. So give it the benefit of the doubt and say on the move, when it's not full speed, you can shoot on the move better than other tanks such as the Panther II or the T-34-100 or M26, because 4 degrees per second or 4 degrees per second of gun elevation is kind of the average standard. 4.5 is good, for example, also on the Object Nano 6 if I remember correctly, but 5 degrees per second is significantly better. You just feel it. It's not a stabilizer or something that should simulate a stabilizer, but there have been so many situations because you're so fast and you have such a high average speed, it just is not easy to fully stop and then let the tank even out and then aim and then shoot. It just takes too long if you're catched off guard. Even Panthers are better than that. But if you just slow down, you tap the E key just once to just slowly roll onward, you can get the shots in. So what kind of ammunition are you actually firing? And you are limited to just 2 shell types. First of all, the HE shell, Obus Explosif, high explosive fragmentation shell. It has a high mass velocity of 1000 meters per second compared to the long 88, and 18 millimeters of penetration might sound okayish, whatever, but it's completely useless because the reload for the clip is way too long. There is just one single ammunition type that you have to use, and that is the APCBC solid shot Obus de Rupture, and it has 1060 meters per second muzzle velocity, which is good, and it features 229 millimeters of penetration. So it's not the very best, but you can make it work with side shots. It works so much better on the Lorraine because you face different opponents, but you have your difficulties versus tanks such as the T-29, T-34. Also Target 2s, you're limited to just the turret front, and also Ferdinands. Ferdinands are very tricky for you. You just have to shoot through the lower glacis or the side cheeks. So it's better to a certain degree with the penetration than the 20-pounder stock shell. In fact, let me show you some stats. So to make a summary, we have no APHE, we have no APCR, APDS, APFSTS, we have no heat FS, we just have HE, which you shouldn't use, and you're limited to only AP. And while we have the greatest muzzle velocity, it still is not extremely good at long ranges. It's more a mid-range weapon to low-range weapon or close quarters. You struggle a little bit when you go head-on against enemy opponents, so try to avoid that. That's all that I'm going to say. So again, let's summarize this tank, and oh boy, this is actually a pretty short tank review for the stats section. We have not very good armor, We have great mobility in comparison to other medium tanks. We have an autoloader, but it is not that great. We don't have that many rounds in our magazine, just 7 in comparison to the 12 in the AMX-13 SS11. So you have to think much more about your reload of the clips and so forth. Your reverse gear is not that good. Your shell is really profiting from the AP spalling damage buff with this patch, otherwise this tank would be really garbage. How does this tank? How does this tank play? Well, it's very simple. Avoid head-on engagements, try to flank the enemy, and have always an option open to retreat so that you can reload your clip. Teamwork is very good here. Always go for either the killing shot with ammo rack or for the disabling shot. Very efficient is it to surround an enemy, to not shoot him from the side but through the entirety of the engine, so that you set the engine on fire, disable his mobility, kill a lot of crew, or outright one-shot the enemy tank through the very great spalling damage cone, and rinse and repeat. That's all I'm going to say. So the tank is simply explained, but it's not so easy and straightforward to use. The Lorraine 40T was just much more fun, which is basically the same tank. And now let's comment on the double A's, and this is here on the Emperor's Garden or Japan map. You can see that the cap is just A and it's on the side, and I flank around, so I push through the middle, if you can call that flanking. And in time I just see a panther, and you can see how long it takes for me to adjust the aim, and I fire on the move and I could get in the shot. This was down to the panther having the gun elevated a lot. I see a lot of pinging on the map, by the way, around the central building. Yet I see this tiger. I wait up until his hull is visible, and then I shoot the edge, and it's a one-shot once more. This is how I make my kills. Just aim at the edge of a tiger. If he's angled or not, it doesn't matter. Your shot will go through, and mostly one-shot them, regardless of how much ammunition they take with them. It's all down to the great damage of the solid shots. If, again, this wouldn't be buffed for this nation, it would be outright awful. If it would be the old mid-tier British thing. Here you can see I try to actually hit the side here, and I do, but I don't kill enough of the enemy crew. I just seem to not have hit the driver, which is a shame. But then I see another tank. It's a Jagdpanther. Also, I use here my binoculars, shoot through it, and I kill the driver, commander, and the gunner. So I can fire basically on the last known position, and I again kill him. So 2 rounds left in the clip. This is how fast you can actually come into the situation where you really have to think about a reload. So the question is here, should I now just fire once and force the reload to then engage the opponent once more? It's always a decision. Are you in the right position? And it's really this situation, firing on this RE251 that tries to flank hardcore as well while climbing this ridgeline like a mountain goat. The tank has the mobility for it. So now I'm down to a 38-second reload, and this is basically a reload of a KV2. For all intents and purposes, it takes a lot of time. I see the Panther 2 from their spawn. Yeah, I can't fire at him. So this is where the 20-pounder from the British would be outright superior. Maybe I could have gotten another shot on the RE251 in time with the stabilizer and so forth. On the move, it's just better. Maybe I could have fired at this Panther as well. And now I see a lot of stuff going on the minimap. A gets captured by the enemy. My team actually gets forced to retreat. It doesn't look that good. Where is the Panther? I know that he's coming. I must kind of wait for him. Then I see here a Tiger 2. I fire at the back of the turret, actually through the engine. And yeah, the shell doesn't go through, so I'm not quite sure what happened there, if the engine really absorbed here the shell, but a shot in the back of the turret actually kills him for the ace, just like that. And I have 5 rounds left. With 5 rounds, you actually can work. So you can see I just have 2 full magazines with me. So overall, it's like 28 rounds. Do you really need more for the battle? I don't think so. So the Panther this time is in an awkward angle. I don't hit him quite well. He just retreats a bit in time. I don't quite hit the ammunition, and he stretches out to bring the front of the tank to make the most out of the armor, which is good normally, but I can punch through it. In like 80% of the cases you can punch through. My gun breech got slightly damaged. That seems to have been another Panther, and now I'm in a very strange situation. I'm behind the enemy lines, and I expect to fire at A, but I know that there is another Panther coming. So I just have 2 rounds left. So with how many enemies can I deal in the capture zone? This is now a really tense situation, a situation that is really worth talking about. I see an enemy firing, it's a Panther, and I disable him. Commander gunner, loader, and horizontal turret drive. Sadly not the gun breach. This is also another tactic. If you just have 1 shot left, you can't guarantee the 1 shot. Just disable the gun breach and get out of there to reload the clip. So now I'm reversing. You can see reverse gear is not very good. Where is the Panther? I'm looking for the Panther. Where is the Panther? Oh, there it is. So I have to flee. Now the forward mobility is good. I'm not quite sure if he has seen me, but the other Panther in the capture zone is still alive, and I have to deal with that guy as well. So, and I can't guarantee that the Panther behind me actually has not seen me. So the Panther in the capture zone got killed, and I'm just waiting for the Panther to arrive. Somebody could behind me. Very risky gameplay, but sometimes it's really no risk, no fun. Shooting here through the lower plate, and the great spalling damage simply one-shots the enemy for my 8th kill. Great result. Now we have to get A. We need to win this game, and we need to capture A for that. This is always a very tricky situation because of your lack of armor and your lack of reverse gear, and you're pretty big but have no armor. If the enemy knows where you are, so if you give your position away by firing, by taking on multiple enemies at once, by being in a capture zone, and the enemy just, you know, thinking, making use of their brains, then they can figure out where you are. You have a pretty damn hard time. Again, no stabilizer, reload problems, 6.67 seconds. You do not feel like having a real autoloader compared to the AMX-13, where it's a bit more apparent. So that's all that I have to say. So 8 kills right now. Let's move on. I choose here to go behind this ridge line to have then a better elevation for my gun or depression, because 8 degrees sometimes is good, sometimes it's just not good enough. Let's see if there is an enemy. I see something. Yeah, that's a Sherman. Seems like a Japanese Sherman. Straight through the front, 1 shot. The spalling damage is just amazing, and you sometimes, when you shoot enemies from the front, do not really feel any difference to something like APHE, which prior to this patch was my undisputed favorite shell type if entering that tank or entering enemy tanks, because you do so much crew damage. APHE has some downsides, like for example, if you shoot through the engine, the actually the engine absorbs all the shrapnels, and the crew gets nothing from those shrapnels. And the tip of the warhead, which should fly on, if you know how an APHE shell is actually built, it would just show you how this is not correctly modeled. So APHE sometimes seems to overperform, sometimes it underperforms, and it does not really get the benefit of the spalling damage when punching through armor. So for this discussion of AP versus APHE, both have their advantages and or disadvantages. Again, the shell in terms of muzzle velocity and penetration and also normalization is kind of comparable to the long 88 from the Germans, but the damage output is like from the 20-pounder, but much better in fact. So there is a tiger behind me, and this guy, it's now very problematic. I kill his commander, but that does not really do much, so this should have been a shot that I should not have taken. He can easily punch through my armor where he wishes to, but I have to carefully aim on the turret, so a tiger hull down is actually pretty nasty, and your gun breech gets damaged a lot, I have to say this, like, yeah, but you could see one of my guys in the turret actually survived. The gun breech absorbed all the damage, and yeah, with 3 guys, even with 2, you're still fully operational. How about the reload of a clip in the cap? It takes ages. It literally takes ages. It's comparable to the Big Light Panzer if you have watched that review. Yeah, so 9 kills. Somebody says that I'm very bad at this game. I have to agree, just 9 kills and still not being first in the team. I should fly an aircraft, really. So this ME410, by the way, he did a really good job setting a lot of our tanks on fire and killing them in the outcome of the battle. Let's skip to the last kill. The last kill in this game is this scene here with the Panther. He respawns, he sees me retreating, he still manages to shoot at me and hit me, but I take no damage. So we will have a look just in a moment where it goes. So 80mm front of the Panther, that means I still can ricochet. I do not fall into the 30% interaction rule with the 100mm round, but I also can punch through at most of the time, kill the driver, and actually get my 10th kill, double ace. And as we can see, he actually hit me exactly on the edge of the upper hull. And there I absorbed the shot. I don't know if it was a non-penetration or a ricochet, it doesn't matter. And let's just have a quick look at the post-battle results. 3 kill assists, 1 capture zone, and 10 kills, double ace for 62,000 civil lines and 7,000 research points. So that is a good result. Somebody really thinks I'm really bad at this game, so yeah, because I still wasn't first in the team, I guess. Somebody flew around with an aircraft, strafed something, has comparable action in the match, still was first in place despite 5 kills less. So that's the AMX-50 for you. Fantastic tank, and I'm really looking forward to the AMX-50 Super C. Because of the 120mm gun with the practically copy and paste solid shots from the M103 with a 7.7 reload. I really am looking forward to that. So that's it for me today. Thanks for watching, thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed this video. If so, please give it a like, subscribe if you want to see more, and let me know in the comment section what you think about this tank, the French and the autoloader, and we'll see each other in the skies and on the battlefields of War Thunder.